Hey guys, tonight we slip back through the centuries into a world of stone cloisters, flickering candles, and the kind of thunder that rattles stained glass. You're barefoot, wrapped in wool, and the air smells faintly of wet moss and old parchment. The convent walls rise high around you, like quiet sentinels, and the only color for miles is the stubborn green of a rainy countryside. You're about to spend the afternoon like a proper medieval nun, which means no smartphones, no takeout, and no TikTok filters. Just your hands, your thoughts, and whatever the abbess assigns you. Spoiler, it's rarely fun. And let's be real, if you were dropped into this reality right now, you probably wouldn't last past Vespers. But don't worry, I've got you. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where my sleepy travelers are listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sky grumbles low and long as you step into the cloister corridor. You tug your habit tighter around your shoulders. Wet wool is a mood and not a good one. Somewhere near the back of the stone halls, the abbess is assigning everyone tasks for the rainy afternoon. You know what's coming. Your sandals squish on the stone as you round the corner. You've been dodging scriptorium duty for 2 weeks now, and God saw you. Today's your turn. You arrive at the scriptorium just as Sister Agnes huffs and passes you the goose quill, like she's handing over a sword in defeat. The room smells like parchment, damp linen and ink that somehow always leaks even when the jar is closed. Candles flicker against the gloom, their wax pooling like sleepy stalactites. You drop onto the low bench and slide a half-finished psalter toward you. The Latin is cramped and spidery, and someone, probably Sister Althea, has drawn a tiny angel on the edge with suspiciously smug eyebrows. You dip the quill into the inkwell, blow gently on the tip, and begin to copy. Line after line, word after word. Your back starts to ache by the second column, and you can already feel the ink smudge on your pinky. Sister Agnes clears her throat next to you, loudly, and sighs in a way that suggests your handwriting is offensive to Saint Benedict himself. Outside, the rain thickens into a curtain of sound. You glance up at the small stained glass window. A blue and gold Madonna looks down at you like she knows you just spelled Hosanna with 2 NES and no shame. You fix it with a squiggle and pray the abbess never sees. Fun fact, historians know nuns weren't just copyists, they were also creators. Some convents were known for producing intricate illuminated manuscripts full of swirling vines, golden halos, and the occasional board bunny in the margins. One particularly bold manuscript from a German convent includes a squirrel with a sword. No, I'm not joking. You pause to stretch your fingers. The stone bench is colder than your ex's texts. Across the table, Sister Margaret is humming under her breath. Gregorian chant, of course. It's always Gregorian chant. She glances up and says, "You've got ink on your nose." You reach up. She's lying. Classic Sister Margaret. The rain seems to trap all sound inside. The scriptorium becomes its own world, dim, rhythmic, and oddly comforting. Every scratch of the quill is a small rebellion against the storm outside. You glance over to see Sister Joan smuggling in a wedge of hard cheese under her sleeve. Bold move. Cheese contraband is real. One time, a nun got sent to scrub flagstones for a week for hoarding salted butter. But not everything about the scriptorium is solemn. Historians still argue whether nuns were allowed to decorate their own initials with tiny doodles, or if those were added later by rebellious scribes. One surviving manuscript has a nun peeking out from behind a capital Q, wearing an expression that is pure, "Don't tell the abbess." You shift on the bench, your lower back now a battlefield of regrets. The abbess passes by, nodding slowly as she surveys the work. You keep your head down and try not to breathe too loudly. She smells of candle smoke and authority. Thunder rumbles again, deep and slow, like a dragon rolling over in its sleep. For a moment, everything pauses. A few nuns cross themselves reflexively. You don't, mostly because your hands are covered in ink and possibly crumbs from that cheese wedge Sister Joan accidentally dropped. A droplet of rain sneaks through a crack in the window and lands on the corner of your page. It blooms into the ink like a tear. You blot it quickly, smearing the Latin into a dark bruise. Welp, let's call it interpretive. Outside, the cloister gardens are already flooding. You can hear the slap of wet sandals as someone runs past, probably Sister Beatrix chasing the laundry line again. You grin. Last week, a pair of bloomers ended up on the chapel's weather vane. They stayed there for 2 full days. Back inside, the pace slows. Your fingers move automatically now, eyes half-lidded. The repetition becomes meditative, like a sleepy kind of prayer. You start to imagine yourself not as a modern visitor stuck in the 12th century, but as someone who has always lived here. Someone who knows the weight of quiet work and the joy of hearing rain tap against thick stone walls. Then Sister Agnes bumps your elbow. You both smudge your final lines and groan in harmony. For a moment, even she looks amused, and just like that, the abbess rings the bell for the next rotation. Kitchen duty. You stand slowly, legs stiff, quill still in hand. 1 page copied, 46 to go. But hey, you survived your first hour. Your sandals slap against the damp stones as you trudge toward the kitchen, ducking under an archway that always seems to drip directly onto your neck. You'd swear it does it on purpose. Rain drums a steady rhythm on the clay-tiled roof overhead, and the scent of wet herbs and cabbage creeps in before you even reach the door. Inside the convent kitchen, it's hotter than a dragon's armpit. A low fire smoulders in the hearth, spitting occasionally like it's offended by the weather. Cauldrons bubble, wooden spoons clatter, and someone's already dropped a bag of barley with a very unholy mutter. Welcome to the chaos. Your role today? Soup, the big pot. The kind that's technically a vegetable stew, but secretly contains whatever was left over from 3 days ago. And maybe a beetle, possibly 2. Sister Althea hands you a ladle the size of a baby's leg and says, "Stir clockwise." Always clockwise. She doesn't explain why. You don't ask. You learned last time what happens when you go counterclockwise. Someone's rosary gets tangled in a meat hook. Long story. The convent stew has a reputation, not just for its legendary saltiness, 1 bite and your mouth forgets joy, but also for its mysterious origins. Historians know that many nuns grew their own herbs and veggies, leeks, garlic, peas, and occasionally traded with local villagers for extras. But there are also whispered tales of nuns adding special ingredients from herbal cabinets that weren't exactly FDA approved. You lean over the pot, steam fogging your face. It smells mostly like lentils and divine patience. Sister Matilda is at the chopping block, methodically dicing carrots while humming Ave Maria, with the kind of focus that suggests she is picturing someone's face with each slice. Behind you, Sister Joan is taste testing with what may or may not be the same spoon she stirred with. You decide not to look directly at her. Self-preservation. The heat makes your skin prickle, and the air is thick with stories. This is where the real gossip lives, not the formal kind whispered during prayers, but the juicy, caramelized confessions that float up between bread rolls and leek pies. Sister Benedicta was caught napping during matins, someone mutters near the oven. You pretend not to hear, but file it away. Another voice chimes in. Did you see the Lord's messenger who rode in last week? His tunic was tight. That's impure, someone hisses. Well, so was the stitching. The joke earns a gasp and a stifled giggle. You nearly drop the ladle. There's a certain rhythm to rainy day kitchen duty. Prep, stir, dodge elbows, repeat. You knead dough with aching forearms while someone beside you sings a hymn about divine mercy that sounds suspiciously like it could double as a drinking song. It is hard to imagine these same hands, splotched with flour and beet juice, once meticulously embroidered altar cloths or copied sacred texts, but here they are, smacking dough like it owes them money. Quirky fact of the day: some medieval convents had unique house rules that forbade excessive seasoning. Spices like cinnamon or ginger were considered too worldly. Others, however, were known to sneak in nutmeg or saffron if they thought no one was watching. Your convent? Let's just say Sister Clarissa guards the spice cupboard like a jealous dragon. You're on your third turn stirring the stew when the abbess strolls in. Everyone stiffens just a bit. She walks like she owns the floor, and maybe the weather too. She peers into the pot and sniffs. "Needs time," she declares, then disappears as silently as she came. It's unclear whether that was a recipe suggestion or an existential statement. You sigh and reach for the herb shelf. The thyme jar is empty, of course it is. You open a small tin marked assorted greens and take your chances. Whatever it is, it's green. That's good enough. Historians still argue whether convent kitchens were overseen strictly by the abbess or managed communally by the sisters. Some say each nun had her assigned specialty. Others claim it was more of a chaotic free-for-all. Judging by the scene in front of you, it's very much the latter. A crash. Someone knocks over a basket of turnips. A puff of flour hits the air like a ghost. You find yourself laughing in spite of everything. It's hard not to. There's something absurd and oddly intimate about dozens of women trying to feed one another while navigating slippery floors, smoky air, and the occasional rat. And yes, you see it. A rat. Just a little one. It darts behind the firewood stack and vanishes before anyone else notices. You decide to keep that detail between you and your rosary. By the time the bell rings for sex, the stew is done, the bread is in the oven, and your arms feel like overcooked noodles. You wipe your hands on your apron and sneak a taste of the crusty edge of a loaf. It's hot, sharp with caraway, and actually, not bad. Small miracles, right? Sister Agnes walks by and mutters, "You burn the stew?" No. Then it's a good day. There's a hush as trays are loaded, bowls pass down a line of hands, and steam fills the stone dining hall like incense. You carry 2 wooden bowls toward the table, careful not to spill. Outside, the rain hasn't let up. It's just there, a soft wall of sound behind the clinking of spoons and quiet murmurs of thanks. You sit, you eat, you breathe. And for a moment, you forget about the ink, the blisters, and the turnip that nearly ended your career. It's warm, it's filling, it's holy, in its own weird, wonderful way. And before you can think too hard about what might have been in that assorted greens tin, the abbess rings the bell again, embroidery next, of course. You rise from the table with a belly full of soup and a growing sense of dread. Embroidery hour, otherwise known as poke yourself in the finger repeatedly while trying to look serene time. You follow the other nuns through a narrow corridor, passing dripping windows and oil lamps flickering like they're holding their breath. Outside, the storm has found its rhythm, and thunder rumbles like it's turning over in bed. The embroidery room smells like lavender sachets, old thread, and passive aggression. You settle onto a bench already warmed by someone else's rear, and a basket of tangled silks is pushed into your lap. Deep breath, you can do this. You've only accidentally stitched your sleeve to a cushion twice this month. You reach for the dullest needle in the basket, it is safer that way, and sort through a handful of threads dyed with things like woad, madder root, and crushed bugs. That's not a joke. Cochineal beetles, gorgeous reds, snail slime, surprisingly luminous. Welcome to medieval textile science, where everything is gross but beautiful. Sister Felicity is already stitching. Her hoop holds a meticulously outlined saint, with piercing eyes and what appears to be suspiciously modern cheekbones. "That's St. Catherine," she murmurs without looking up. "Or maybe Lady Rosalind from the manor. Depends on the lighting." You start your own pattern. Simple vine work around a psalm verse, but your hand is shaky, and the thread keeps knotting like it's in a bad mood. Meanwhile, Sister Marjorie sits 2 benches down, working on something massive. Gold thread, intricate filigree. You squint. Is that a halo? No. Wait, it's a donut. You lean a little closer. Okay, not a donut. It's a stylized wheel, possibly a symbol of martyrdom. Possibly a jab at Sister Agnes, who broke the spinning wheel last week and blamed the rain. The symbolism is layered. Embroidery in medieval convents was no joke. Many nuns were trained artists, commissioned to create altar cloths, vestments, banners, even gifts for visiting nobles. One famous nun, Guda, from 12th century Germany, stitched herself into a manuscript with the Latin caption, "Guda, a sinner, wrote and painted this book. Iconic energy. You settle into your rhythm. Needle up, needle down. The cloth pulls tight with each motion. The rain softens to a hush, and for a while, all you hear is the click and pull of threads and the occasional frustrated sigh. Sister Joan breaks the silence. Did you hear about the relic in the chapel? Everyone looks up. You pause mid-stitch. They say it's St. Edmund's finger, but I'm not convinced. Looks like a chicken bone. There's a beat of silence, then, I thought it was his toe. No, the toe's in Canterbury. Historians still argue about that, Sister Matilda says sagely. Historians argue about everything, someone mutters. They don't have to sew halos all afternoon. Laughter ripples through the room like a shared secret. You glance down at your work. Your vine has sprouted something. Is that a rose? Or a mushroom? Hard to say. You decide it's both. Let the symbolism speak for itself. Embroidery isn't just decoration, it's narrative. Every stitch holds a story, and sometimes a subtle protest. In some convents, nuns allegedly slipped coded messages into their work, initials of secret patrons, tiny symbols of resistance, or even the occasional sarcastic cherub with an exaggerated pout. One surviving sampler includes a bird flipping its tail in a gesture that looks suspiciously rude. Coincidence? You think not. Sister Agnes leans over and raises an eyebrow at your vine. Interesting composition, she says, voice neutral as a wet sock. You nod solemnly. Inspired by divine chaos, you reply. She blinks, then snorts. Just a little. The rain picks up again, and the window panes rattle softly. Sister Ellen wraps a scarf tighter around her neck and mutters about drafts. You feel a chill too, not from cold, but from something deeper, a moment of stillness, of reflection. There's something holy about this work. You may not be painting grand altarpieces or writing sermons, but you're stitching beauty into the everyday. Each pull of the thread a whisper, each knot a prayer, or at least that's what the abbess says when she's in a poetic mood. You lean back and stretch your arms. The candlelight plays across the golden thread in Sister Marjorie's hoop, catching it like sunrise on dew. The effect is dazzling. For a moment the whole room glows. You smile, then promptly stab yourself in the thumb. There's no blood, just pride wounded, but Sister Joan catches your hiss. She offers a scrap of linen, already stained from a dozen past pricks. You press it to your thumb and carry on. You'll keep this sampler. Maybe not for display in the chapel, God forbid, but tucked under your mattress. A quiet souvenir of rain, thread, and one very passive-aggressive wheel. Outside, the bell tolls. None of you move at first. Then slowly, the needles still, the threads are tucked away, and the room empties like a dream fading with daylight. You step into the hall, warm from the fire and the soft company of women who talk with their hands and pray with stitches. The rain is still falling, but now it's more lullaby than lament. Time to tend the garden. The garden path is slippery, the stones mossy with just enough attitude to remind you who's in charge. Rain pours steady now, soaking your hood in moments. You clutch your rake like a sword, though honestly, you're pretty sure you'll be going to do more raking of your own dignity than any actual soil. You step through the wooden archway into the convent's small herbal garden. Even in the rain it smells strong. Wet thyme, crushed mint, and the sharp earthy tang of chamomile leaves, half trampled by the last sister assigned to outdoor contemplation. No one else is out here. Just you, the wind, and the occasional very judgmental crow on the fence post. Most convents maintained at least one garden, not just for beauty, but for survival. Herbs for cooking, healing, dying, even warding off evil spirits. Looking at you, rue and garlic. You don't need to be a mystic to know this patch of mud matters. But right now, it feels more like divine punishment than sacred duty. You start with the sage bushes. They're drooping like sad old monks. As you begin clearing dead leaves, your sleeve snags on a bramble. Of course it does. Nature's way of reminding you who invented humility. There's a bench beneath the old pear tree, though no one's foolish enough to sit on it today. Still, you glance at it. The wood is dark with water, its edges green with lichen. That bench has secrets. You once saw Sister Agnes sit there for an entire hour without blinking, just staring into the rain like she was trying to summon angels, or maybe remembering her life before the convent. You've never asked. You move to the raised bed of calendula. Bright orange blossoms, even in the gloom. They look almost smug. You kneel down, pull weeds with frozen fingers, and try to pray as you work. It's hard to focus, though, when your habit's soaked through and a fat drop just landed inside your boot. It's fine. You're serene, enlightened, definitely not regretting every life choice that led you to this moment. A soft noise behind you makes you glance back. Just the wind, you think. But no, there's a flash of movement. A small, cloaked figure slipping between the hedges. Probably Sister Ellen sneaking off again. She does this, says she, talks to the clouds. Okay, sure. You decide to let her have that. You rake slowly now, not because it's effective, but because your arms hurt, and this much wet fabric weighs approximately 1,000 regrets. And yet, you pause. There's a quiet here that doesn't exist in the scriptorium or the kitchen. The garden, even drenched, even mucky, feels like an ancient whisper. You're breathing in something older than you, older than this convent. Some nuns claimed gardening was as holy as prayer. Hildegard of Bingen, yes, the actual real nun, believed plants sang to those who knew how to listen. Historians still argue whether her notes on plant harmonies were metaphors or, literal sound therapy. You look around now and think, maybe she wasn't entirely wrong. The raindrops plop steadily onto broad cabbage leaves, bouncing like tiny silver bells. The mint exhales cool breath into the mist. You catch a glimpse of a worm wiggling with what looks like irritated purpose. Everyone's doing their part. You lean on your rake and watch the ivy creep up the stone wall, slow and stubborn, just like the convent, just like you. Then you hear it, footsteps squelching through the mud. You turn, rake raised, just in case it's a rabbit uprising, but it's only Sister Beatrix. She's got a woven basket in one hand and what appears to be a broken garden fork in the other. Thistles again, she mutters, every time it rains, like clockwork. You nod sagely. They like drama. She snorts. Don't we all? Together, you tackle the row of rosemary shrubs. They're prickly, bitter-scented, and deeply resentful of your interference. You respect that. Rosemary has long been used to ward off illness and bad vibes, though today it's mostly warding off your sense of self-worth as it scratches you through your sleeves. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rings. None of you move. You ever wonder, Beatrix says softly, if anyone outside remembers we're here? You shrug. Maybe not, but the bees do. She smiles at that. Bees have better priorities than people. It's not the kind of conversation you write about in illuminated manuscripts, but it sticks with you. By the time you finish, your fingers are purple with cold, and your boots make squelchy sounds with every step. You straighten slowly, stretch your back, and watch the mist curl around the edges of the stone wall like it's trying to sneak a peek at the sacred herbs. You leave the garden neater, if no less muddy. Your soul might not feel cleansed, but your arms certainly feel like they've been through a spiritual boot camp. The abbess stands near the door, her cloak pulled tight. "Back in time for prayers," she says, voice dry as a bread crust. You nod, barely. You've got mud on your cheek and probably a worm in your sleeve, but you made it. You did what needed doing. And maybe, just maybe, something in you feels a little less tangled. Now, if only someone else would volunteer for the library shift. You step through the archway from the garden into the cloister again, dripping like a guilty pilgrim. Rainwater trickles down your back. Your toes have officially given up on being dry for the rest of the day, and your habit sticks to your knees in a way that feels vaguely like betrayal. No matter, you're expected in the study hall now, for language review and penmanship practice. And as always, it promises to be both illuminating and emotionally compromising. The hallway outside the study smells of candle smoke and overcooked onions. You wipe your hands on your sleeve, forgetting it's soaked in rosemary-infused soil. Great. Now you smell like an angry soup. You slide into the study behind a line of equally damp and resigned nuns. There's a long oak table, a scattering of inkwells, and Sister Magdalene at the front with a wax tablet and the determined energy of someone who knows she has to teach Latin to a group of women who would rather be boiling their own boots. You sit beside Sister Ellen, who already has ink on her chin and a haunted look in her eyes. She leans over and whispers, "We're on declensions today." You immediately regret showing up. The abbess appears at the back of the room, arms folded like a disappointed archangel, and the room falls quiet. Sister Magdalene clears her throat and begins the recitation. "Amo, amas, amat." You chant along. Your voice is mostly confident. Mostly. The rhythm of the verbs somehow comforts you, even if they sound vaguely like an exorcism. Latin was essential to convent life. Scripture, correspondence, even recipes were penned in it. The church wasn't going to let you just scribble things in the local dialect like a peasant. No, Latin gave the work authority. And confusion. Lots of confusion. You turn to your wax tablet and scratch out conjugations with your stylus, only to realize halfway through that you've been spelling to bless as to boil. Sister Agnes, next to you, raises an eyebrow and mutters, "Planning to cook a soul today?" You shoot her a look. "Only if they deserve it." The abbess walks by. You both look angelic immediately. Penmanship follows. You're handed a fresh parchment and a new quill. This one still smells faintly of goose. You dip it cautiously into the ink and begin practicing your uncial script. Tall, round, precise letters. Each one must look like it's ready to be carved into the walls of heaven. Yours look like they were sketched during a carriage accident. You write, "Benedictus qui venit in nomine Domini." You reread, "Ben Dictus qui ventus in, is that the windy name of the Lord?" You glance at Sister Joan's sheet. Hers looks like the Magna Carta. Yours looks like a bad mood. A heavy sigh escapes you. The abbess notices. She walks over, peers down at your parchment and says gently, "That D is ambitious." She walks away without further explanation. You don't know if that's encouragement or an insult. And here's a quirky little tidbit. Some convents had secret penmanship competitions, quietly of course. No gambling, just pride. The winner might get an extra piece of dried apple at dinner, or more thrillingly, permission to write the opening initial on the next gospel page. Big, fancy, full of gold and dragons. Dragons were optional. You practice your lines, tongue between your teeth, hand cramping slowly. You wonder if St. Jerome ever had to start over 15 times because his S looked like a confused duck. Probably not. Your concentration breaks as Sister Ellen lets out a soft groan. She gotten ink on her sleeve again and is now trying to wipe it on her sock under the table without anyone seeing. You pass her a scrap of cloth and pretend not to notice the smudge on her cheek has turned into a full-blown stripe. Then, as if summoned by your suffering, the abbess calls for free translation time. The task: a psalm fragment, translated into clean, grammatically correct Latin. You stare at it, the Valley of Shadows. You write, Vallis Umbrarum. Then pause. Is that right? Or did you just name a Tolkien fan club? Historians still debate the extent to which medieval nuns truly mastered Latin, or if they just got good at pretending to understand it while copying it over and over again. Some evidence shows that many nuns were quite fluent. Others suggest they just learned patterns, like religious Sudoku. You sit back, parchment crooked, hand sore. The study smells like hot wax and deep resentment. But strangely, there's something soothing about it all. Everyone in this room is doing their best to bend a dead language into something beautiful, something sacred. A loud snap breaks the silence. Sister Agnes's quill has split. She swears under her breath in something that is very much not Latin. You stifle a laugh. Eventually the bell rings for Vespers. Your brain is full of declensions, your hand is covered in ink, and your script looks like it lost a bet. But you learned something, even if it is only that your DS are indeed ambitious. You rise stiffly, roll your shoulders, and leave the room with the rest of the ink-stained, sleep-deprived sisterhood. Outside, the rain has eased into a gentle mist. The air smells like moss and candle smoke. You inhale deeply. Time for chapel. Time for quiet. You brush a stray ink dot from your nose and try not to think about tomorrow. Scrammer review. The chapel is dim and echoing, the stone archways curving above you like the ribs of some ancient sleeping beast. You shuffle in with the others, your habit still damp around the hem, your mind still tangled in Latin declensions and blotchy pen strokes. The floor is cool beneath your sandals, and the smell here is always the same: beeswax, old wood, and something you can only describe as holy dust. You slide into the choir stalls. To your left, Sister Ellen is mouthing the opening psalm, probably trying to preload it before she stumbles. To your right, Sister Agnes already has her hands folded like she's trying to intimidate a saint. The bell chimes once, the abbess signals, and the chant begins. Gregorian chant isn't what most people think. It's not slow, sad droning. Well, okay, it is slow and kind of droning, but there's a rhythm to it, a heartbeat in the rise and fall. You feel it in your chest more than your ears. It's the medieval version of lo-fi, honestly. No bass drops, just eternal forgiveness in minor keys. You open your mouth and join in. The Latin spills out, syllables you don't fully understand but can feel vibrating through your ribs. You stumble once on miserere, but recover before Sister Agnes can send you a sideways glance of divine judgment. It's meditative. You stop thinking about your muddy sleeves, or the ache in your knees, or the fact that your elbow still smells faintly of sage and regret. And then you hear it, a tiny snort. Someone's fighting sleep, hard. It's Sister Joan. Her head dips forward and jerks back up like a pigeon trying to pretend it's not tired. You keep chanting. She does it again and again, then finally jerks so far forward that her forehead bumps the pew in front of her. Thunk. A moment of pause. A tiny gasp. Then total silence as every nun freezes like statues. She blinks. The abbess blinks. Then, miraculously, chant resumes, like nothing happened. You have no idea how none of you laughed. Divine intervention. After Vespers, the abbess announces, "Guest has arrived. Hospitality team, prepare the visitor's cell." You freeze. Visitor? Who shows up in a thunderstorm? The rules of convent hospitality are strict. Even the poorest nun must give up her cloak or bread if a guest arrives. Some guests stay one night, others much longer. And occasionally, they bring secrets. You follow a small group of sisters to the guest wing, tucked beyond the main cloister. The room is modest, a straw mattress, a crucifix, a stool that definitely wobbles more than it should. You help lay out fresh linens and light a candle, then step into the corridor to wait. The doors swing open, and in walks a noble woman, rain-drenched, cloaked in fur. Her hood is pulled low, but you glimpse it, rouge on her cheeks. Her eyes scan the stone hall like she's looking for a ghost. You bow awkwardly. She nods, but barely. "Lady Isolde," the abbess says softly, "you are safe here." Safe. That word hums through the air like an extra bell. Turns out noble women did take refuge in convents, sometimes for a night, sometimes forever. Some came to escape husbands, rumors, or wars. Some came with heavy purses, others with heavier secrets. You sneak another glance at Lady Isolde. There's mud on her hem, but her boots are stitched with gold thread. She smells like rosewater and horse sweat. She looks like someone who knows how to hold a sword, but hasn't had to in years. That night you're assigned to help carry a warming stone to her cell. It's hot from the hearth, wrapped in cloth. As you set it by her bed, she whispers, "Do you all live like this?" In silence, you hesitate, mostly, except the chickens and Sister Joan's snoring. Her lips twitch, almost a smile, then she says nothing more. You return to the chapel. The rains return too, whispering on the windows. You try to focus, but your mind drifts. Who is she running from? Why now? Historians still argue whether convents were always sanctuaries or sometimes prisons. For some women, they were places of peace and purpose. For others, they were exile, just without the chains. You light a candle, then another. The shadows flicker along the stone floor, dancing like cloaked figures. Sister Ellen joins you. "She doesn't look like she's here to pray," she whispers. You shrug. "Maybe she's just here to rest," Ellen frowns. "Or hide." Then she walks away. You sit in the back pew and watch the rain fall, the candlelight flickering. The chapel feels different tonight. Not colder, not warmer, just watchful. A storm outside, a stranger inside, and tomorrow you'll be assigned confession duty. You hope you're ready. Morning sneaks in slowly, draped in mist and a drizzle that taps on the roof like a nosy neighbor. You barely slept. The stone walls held the cold a little too well, and every creak in the guest wing echoed like a medieval horror story. Still, duty calls, and today it calls you to the confessional chair. You dress quickly, fingers numb, hair damp, mood uncertain. Confession isn't your favorite, not because of the sins. No, those are mostly predictable. It's the sitting still for hours in a cramped wooden box while pretending you re-invisible. There's something about it that makes your knees ache and your soul itch. You arrive early to the chapel and nod to Sister Beatrix, who hands you a beeswax candle and a tiny scrap of bread. "Don't faint this time," she says, eyes twinkling. You give her a look and whisper, "Only if someone confesses to arson again." She smirks and disappears down the nave. The confessional is nothing fancy, just a carved wooden screen, 2 stools, and the lingering smell of incense and anxiety. You settle in behind the screen, cloak wrapped tight, and light the candle. The flame flickers like it knows something you don't. The first penitent arrives, Sister Marjorie. Her voice is soft but steady. "I confess that I withheld mustard at supper out of spite." You blink. Penance. 3 Ave Marias and 1 kind gesture to Sister Agnes. "I suppose," she sighs, and shuffles off. Next, Sister Ellen. I laughed when the abbess tripped on the hem of her habit. You cover your own smirk. Say 2 psalms and avoid temptation, and maybe the abbess. She nods, already giggling again as she walks away. And so it goes. The rain softens, becomes almost meditative. The candle burns lower. And then you hear it. Silk. Expensive. Someone not used to walking on stone floors. A voice, low, measured. "I seek penance," she says. You recognize her. Lady Isolde, the guest. She kneels on the other side of the screen, and for a long moment there is only breath, rain, candle crackle. "I struck my husband," she says finally. "Not once, not in fear, but out of fury." Your heart thumps. She continues. "He hurt someone I loved. I found out too late and I struck him. He fell down the stairs. He lived, but I did not stay." Silence. You take a breath. "And now you're here." "I ran until the saddle tore. I remembered the abbess's name from a feast long ago. This was the only place I knew I could breathe." You don't know what to say. Not exactly. The rules say you should assign penance, a prayer, a fast, something properly cleansing, but your instincts whisper something else. "Have you asked God for forgiveness?" She exhales. "Every mile." "Then ask once more," you say gently. "Not as a noble, not as a wife, just as yourself." She's quiet a long time. Then, "And what is my penance?" You consider. "Help Sister Agnes with the laundry." There's a pause, then the faintest laugh. That is penance. She leaves, and you sit still, heart hammering like a drum in a stone cavern. Historians still debate how formal or honest medieval confessions really were. Some suggest nuns were stern record keepers of moral order. Others believe they were more like therapists before therapists existed, especially in all-female convents where community was everything. You spend the next hour listening. More confessions trickle in. Sister Joan admits to daydreaming during prayers. Sister Matilda says she threw out a burnt crust instead of eating it. There's even one anonymous voice who confesses to occasionally enjoying the singing too much. You let that one slide. Then Sister Agnes comes in. "I envied Lady Isolde's cloak," she mutters. You nod. "Natural, do one act of humility today." She hesitates. "What counts?" "Helping with laundry." Her eyes narrow. "You're organizing penance, aren't you?" You smile. Divinely inspired. The candle gutters low, your back aches, but your mind feels clearer, lighter, like something sacred brushed against you and left a thumbprint. Outside, the rain returns, softer now, like an old lullaby, the kind that wraps around your shoulders and says, "Rest. You've done enough today." You rise, blow out the candle, and step out of the booth. The air smells fresher, less burdened. You walk toward the cloister window and see Lady Isolde across the courtyard, holding a basket and laughing as Sister Agnes tries to shoo a chicken out of the wash basin. Looks like penance is underway, and soon it'll be time for chores. Again. Chamber pot duty, of course. The glory of convent life. You've sung, you've confessed, you've stirred mysterious stew and dodged scandal in silk. Now brace yourself for the most hallowed rite of all, chamber pot duty. The air is damp as you make your way to the far end of the cloister where the scent is not subtle. It creeps up on you like a disappointed memory. The chamber pot room, sometimes called the re-redorta in polite Latin, is tucked behind the dormitories, behind a thick oak door that creaks ominously when you push it open. You step inside and immediately regret it. Let's paint the picture gently. Rows of ceramic pots, some half full or half empty depending on your spiritual outlook. A stack of straw brooms, a sloshing wooden bucket of lye water, and a small window that serves more as a decorative concept than functional ventilation. The air? An aromatic blend of ammonia, lavender sachets, and existential crisis. The abbess assigns you and Sister Joan to the task. She hands you a rag, a frown, and a whispered, "Offer it up." Classic abbess. You and Joan exchange the look of two women entering a shared battlefield. The unspoken vow, we go in together. We come out clean, or at least emotionally bonded. Historically speaking, nuns managed all sorts of sanitation work themselves. There were no hired hands for the dirty jobs, and during rainy seasons, waste disposal was especially grim. Some convents had primitive plumbing, stone channels or drainage trenches, but let ES just say they weren't exactly the Ritz. You kneel beside the first pot, take a deep breath, mistake, and begin. You rinse, you scrub. You attempt not to make eye contact with anything floating. Joan hums a chant to keep rhythm, though it sounds increasingly like a death march. "This one smells like Sister Beatrix's beetroot diet," she mutters. You gag laugh. "Stop! We'll never make it if you keep talking." "Just saying. That woman eats like she's trying to turn into a root vegetable." You get halfway through when the inevitable happens. Your rag slips straight into the murk. There's a moment of silence as you both stare at it. "A holy relic now," Joan says solemnly. You nod. "May it rest in peace." You toss it into the refuse bin and retrieve a fresh one. This one smells vaguely of vinegar. You decide it's a blessing. A spider skitters across the wall, possibly judging you. You whisper a prayer, not for courage. For a long bath, that will not happen. Chamber pot duty offers a unique form of contemplation. You begin to meditate, not on divine mysteries, but on how quickly dignity evaporates when your knees are wet and your sleeves have mysterious stains. Still, there's a kind of zen to it. Repetition, focus, the very medieval idea that work, even this work, can be holy if done in the right spirit. "Do you ever think," Joan begins, "that saints had to do this too? Saint Hildegard definitely didn't scrub a pot." "I bet she did, once, and then invented herbal soap to avoid doing it again." You're almost finished. The room smells slightly less like a battlefield. You dump the last of the lye water and begin mopping the floor with ancient, resigned strokes. Quirky fact, some convents used ashes mixed with rosemary to clean and deodorize the chamber pots. Others relied on stronger concoctions involving vinegar and, brace yourself, fermented urine. No, really, people swore by it. Historians still argue whether it was truly for cleanliness or just a cruel dare from the 12th century. You light a small cone of incense, one of the rare luxuries permitted, and let it smoke gently in the corner. The scent of dried rose petals and pine wafts in, valiantly battling centuries of, well, history. Joan sits on an overturned bucket and wipes her brow. "You think Lady Isolde knows about this part of convent life?" You snort. "Give her 2 more days. She'll be knee-deep in laundry and regret like the rest of us. Bet she thought we just sat around praying and baking bread." You shake your head. "No one suspects the chamber pots." With the final bucket emptied, the brooms returned, and your last rag blessed and retired, you and Joan step back. The room looks marginally better. It no longer smells like despair, just aged humility. You wash your hands in the cold cistern outside. The water bites. You scrub like Lady Macbeth until your fingers feel raw, but at least they're not visibly cursed anymore. You return to the cloister in silence. Sometimes, after chamber pot duty, there's nothing left to say. The sky is grey, but the rain has stopped. You pause by the herb garden just to smell something pleasant. Lavender, mint, life before chamber pots. Inside, the abbess nods at you. "Well done." That's all she says, but you feel it, a small, shining sliver of pride. You endured, you served, you didn't throw up. That's a win. Sister Ellen passes you in the hall. "You smell like vinegar and triumph." You bow. It is a sacred perfume. Next stop, the library, a few candles, a lot of rules, and, rumor has it, someone's been reading off the assigned list, which means it's time to catch Sister Ellen in the act. Hey guys, tonight we slip back through the centuries into a world of stone cloisters, flickering candles, and the kind of thunder that rattles stained glass. You're barefoot, wrapped in wool, and the air smells faintly of wet moss and old parchment. The convent walls rise high around you, like quiet sentinels, and the only color for miles is the stubborn green of a rainy countryside. You're about to spend the afternoon like a proper medieval nun, which means no smartphones, no takeout, and no TikTok filters. Just your hands, your thoughts, and whatever the abbess assigns you. Spoiler, it's rarely fun. And let's be real, if you were dropped into this reality right now, you probably wouldn't last past Vespers. But don't worry, I've got you. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where my sleepy travelers are listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sky grumbles low and long as you step into the cloister corridor. You tug your habit tighter around your shoulders. Wet wool is a mood and not a good one. Somewhere near the back of the stone halls, the abbess is assigning everyone tasks for the rainy afternoon. You know what's coming. Your sandals squish on the stone as you round the corner. You've been dodging scriptorium duty for 2 weeks now, and God saw you. Today's your turn. You arrive at the scriptorium just as Sister Agnes huffs and passes you the goose quill, like she's handing over a sword in defeat. The room smells like parchment, damp linen and ink that somehow always leaks even when the jar is closed. Candles flicker against the gloom, their wax pooling like sleepy stalactites. You drop onto the low bench and slide a half-finished psalter toward you. The Latin is cramped and spidery, and someone, probably Sister Althea, has drawn a tiny angel on the edge with suspiciously smug eyebrows. You dip the quill into the inkwell, blow gently on the tip, and begin to copy. Line after line, word after word. Your back starts to ache by the second column, and you can already feel the ink smudge on your pinky. Sister Agnes clears her throat next to you, loudly, and sighs in a way that suggests your handwriting is offensive to Saint Benedict himself. Outside, the rain thickens into a curtain of sound. You glance up at the small stained glass window. A blue and gold Madonna looks down at you like she knows you just spelled Hosanna with 2 NES and no shame. You fix it with a squiggle and pray the abbess never sees. Fun fact, historians know nuns weren't just copyists, they were also creators. Some convents were known for producing intricate illuminated manuscripts full of swirling vines, golden halos, and the occasional board bunny in the margins. One particularly bold manuscript from a German convent includes a squirrel with a sword. No, I'm not joking. You pause to stretch your fingers. The stone bench is colder than your ex's texts. Across the table, Sister Margaret is humming under her breath. Gregorian chant, of course. It's always Gregorian chant. She glances up and says, "You've got ink on your nose." You reach up. She's lying. Classic Sister Margaret. The rain seems to trap all sound inside. The scriptorium becomes its own world, dim, rhythmic, and oddly comforting. Every scratch of the quill is a small rebellion against the storm outside. You glance over to see Sister Joan smuggling in a wedge of hard cheese under her sleeve. Bold move. Cheese contraband is real. One time, a nun got sent to scrub flagstones for a week for hoarding salted butter. But not everything about the scriptorium is solemn. Historians still argue whether nuns were allowed to decorate their own initials with tiny doodles, or if those were added later by rebellious scribes. One surviving manuscript has a nun peeking out from behind a capital Q, wearing an expression that is pure, "Don't tell the abbess." You shift on the bench, your lower back now a battlefield of regrets. The abbess passes by, nodding slowly as she surveys the work. You keep your head down and try not to breathe too loudly. She smells of candle smoke and authority. Thunder rumbles again, deep and slow, like a dragon rolling over in its sleep. For a moment, everything pauses. A few nuns cross themselves reflexively. You don't, mostly because your hands are covered in ink and possibly crumbs from that cheese wedge Sister Joan accidentally dropped. A droplet of rain sneaks through a crack in the window and lands on the corner of your page. It blooms into the ink like a tear. You blot it quickly, smearing the Latin into a dark bruise. Welp, let's call it interpretive. Outside, the cloister gardens are already flooding. You can hear the slap of wet sandals as someone runs past, probably Sister Beatrix chasing the laundry line again. You grin. Last week, a pair of bloomers ended up on the chapel's weather vane. They stayed there for 2 full days. Back inside, the pace slows. Your fingers move automatically now, eyes half-lidded. The repetition becomes meditative, like a sleepy kind of prayer. You start to imagine yourself not as a modern visitor stuck in the 12th century, but as someone who has always lived here. Someone who knows the weight of quiet work and the joy of hearing rain tap against thick stone walls. Then Sister Agnes bumps your elbow. You both smudge your final lines and groan in harmony. For a moment, even she looks amused, and just like that, the abbess rings the bell for the next rotation. Kitchen duty. You stand slowly, legs stiff, quill still in hand. 1 page copied, 46 to go. But hey, you survived your first hour. The lanterns are heavy in your hands. Iron-framed, glass-paned, filled with beeswax candles that flicker like nervous secrets. You're on after-dinner duty tonight, tasked with placing them around the convent, along the corridor alcoves, beside the dormitory stairs, one outside the guest cell. Light in a place like this is less about seeing and more about warding off the idea that something might be looking back. You pass Sister Agnes polishing her rosary beads like she's interrogating them, and Sister Ellen, who's already whispering excitedly about tonight's story rotation. Ah yes, the rain may be old, the soup recycled, but one thing remains sacred: ghost hour. Once your lanterns are lit and wobbling warmly in their spots, you drift toward the shadowy back corridor near the cloister gardens, known naturally as the Whisper Walk. That's where the stories happen. After Compline, after the abbess has gone to write very serious thoughts in her personal book of discipline, the sisters gather in the gloom and trade tales like coins. Tonight, the corridor smells of wet stone and melted wax. You wrap your cloak tighter and tuck your feet beneath you on the cold bench. Sister Matilda begins. "You know the one," she says, voice low, "about the abbess who tried to predict her own death. You do know. Everyone does. And yet somehow you want to hear it again. She was proud," Matilda continues. "Smart, too. Said God gave her a vision of her final hour, so she wrote it down. The day, the hour, the weather." A pause. Rain taps on the high window behind you. But she didn't die that day, or the next. Instead, she lost her voice, then her sight, and finally her head. You shiver. "Saw her once," whispers Joan, "or thought I did, walking from the dormitory toward the chapel. No head. Just that big silver crucifix swaying where her face should have been." Ellen pipes up. "They say she haunts the scriptorium now. You know that creaking sound near the ink shelf? It's her hand, reaching for her final sermon." You resist the urge to look over your shoulder. Convents weren't supposed to be spooky, and yet historically they were full of odd little stories. Strange sounds, disappearing books, mysterious smells of roses with no flowers in sight. One record from a 14th century English abbey describes a weeping wall in the dormitory where water pooled beneath a fresco of Mary Magdalene. Was it plumbing? Was it divine sadness? Historians still argue whether it was miracle or mildew. Tonight, in this dark hallway, you don't need evidence, just the atmosphere. The stories pile up. The veiled figure in the herb garden after matins. The bell that rang itself during Lent. The time Sister Beatrix swore her mirror showed someone else blinking back. At some point you find yourself speaking without meaning to. "There's one," you say, about the choir stall that creaks when no one's in it. Everyone turns to you, even Agnes. She's clutching her rosary now like it owes her rent. They say it started after the carpenter repaired the stall. The wood was from an old gallows taken from a village 2 valleys over. Since then, some nights it creaks, not with wind, not with footsteps, but with weight, like someone invisible kneeling for confession. Silence. "Once," you add, "I sat there during Lord's, felt something cold next to me, not air, not draft, just cold, breathing." Sister Ellen gasps. Sister Joan whispers, "What did you do?" You shrug. Shift it over. A nervous laugh ripples through the group, but nobody moves closer to that choir stall now. Not tonight. The abbess appears at the far end of the corridor. Her shadow stretches ahead of her like a stern omen. Everyone straightens. She says nothing, just raises one candle and looks at each of you, one by one. "Time for rest," she says. "Even the saints sleep." Everyone scatters. You pretend not to hear Ellen mutter, "Not the headless ones." You take the long way to your dormitory, lantern in hand. The stone floors are slick with moisture. Your footsteps echo oddly, too loud for one person, too slow. You pause outside the guest cell. The door is shut. Candlelight flickers underneath. You consider knocking, then decide against it. Lady Isolde deserves sleep, and you deserve to not be accused of lurking. You place the last lantern on the sill. It casts golden shadows on the walls, transforming them into strange shapes, crosses, vines, something that might be a face if you stare too long. You climb the dormitory stairs. Inside, the long room breathes softly with the rise and fall of sleeping sisters. You slide into your cot, pull the blanket to your chin, and try not to think of creaking choir stalls or saints without heads. Still, the stories linger in your mind like incense, sweet, spicy, a little too heavy. And as the lantern flickers out near your feet, you swear you hear one final sound, scritch, scritch, like someone writing slowly on the inside of your dreams. Morning arrives the way it always does in a medieval convent, not gently. The chapel bell rings before the sun even considers rising, and your body, stiff from yesterday's ghost stories and chamber pot marathons, groans in protest. You roll out of bed, clutching your cloak around your shoulders like a reluctant hero in the world's most spiritually complex fantasy saga. Today's assignment: cloth dyeing. The rain hasn't stopped. It's grown moodier, less storm, more sulk. You squelch your way down to the dye house, tucked behind the old laundry building where the walls are stained red from centuries of madder root. The air smells sharp and sour, like old vinegar mixed with earth and regret. Inside it's warm. Thankfully, a fire crackles under an iron cauldron the size of a baptismal font. Baskets of raw wool are piled nearby, next to jars filled with crushed berries, dried bark, and several things that may once have been insects. Sister Beatrix hands you a bundle of pale linen and a pair of stiff gloves that clearly haven't fit anyone in 2 centuries. "You're on woad today," she says with the tone of someone passing along a minor curse. "Try not to stain your face." Woad is tricky. It dyes fabric a rich, deep blue, but only after fermenting into a paste that smells unholy. You open the lid of the dye vat and recoil. It smells like cabbage, lost its will to live. You steel yourself, lower the fabric into the dye, and begin the slow process of stirring and praying. Historically, convents produced dyed cloth for their own habits, for trade, and sometimes even as gifts for visiting clergy. Some were known for their mastery of rare colors, like green from weld and indigo from imported sources. Others, like yours, stuck with the basics: woad for blue, madder for red, and onion skin for a surprising, slightly judgmental yellow. You're elbow deep in indigo misery when Sister Ellen arrives, late as usual and already splattered with something suspiciously purple. "Did you start without me?" she asks. "You're lucky I didn't lock the vat." She grins, grabs a bundle of wool and drops it in the red dye pot with all the grace of a toddler feeding soup to a cat. Red spatters across her sleeve, and her chin, and her eyebrow. She looks vaguely like she survived a small medieval battle. "You've got something." You gesture vaguely at her face. She licks her thumb and wipes. Misses entirely. "Better?" "Much worse." Sister Agnes, working at the madder vat, is muttering under her breath. "Consistency, that's what we need. Consistency of color, not random crimson explosions." Ellen smiles sweetly. "I call it divine chaos." You all fall into a rhythm. Stir, dip, wring, hang. The cloths are draped over wooden rods, steaming slightly in the heat. dripping coloured water onto the stone floor in blotches that look eerily like maps to secret nun conspiracies. Quirky tidbit. In some convents, dye batches were guarded like holy relics. Recipes were passed down with hush-hush reverence, and accidents, like the time someone mistook powdered alum for flour, were quietly buried, metaphorically or otherwise. One abbey even claimed to produce a shade of blue, so pure it could confuse the heavens. Historians still argue whether it was pigment or marketing. Midway through the session, you glance at your hands. Despite the gloves, your fingertips are now a vibrant blue. Ellen's are pink. Agnes's are ghostly pale, probably from sheer disapproval. Do you think the colour sticks to your soul? Ellen asks, eyeing her hands. If so, you reply, mine's a peacock feather with anxiety issues. You take a break, wiping your brow with the least filthy patch of sleeve. The dye house smells oddly comforting now, like effort, like purpose. You watch the cloths sway gently from their rods, the colours vivid even in the grey light. It is easy to forget how much beauty can come from something that starts out smelling like a cursed vegetable. Sister Beatrix passes by and inspects your line. Acceptable, she says. From her, that's basically a standing ovation. You smile, faintly proud, even if your eyebrows are now unintentionally blue. Suddenly a loud thwack rings out. Ellen's cloth, still dripping, has flopped off its rod and onto the floor. A perfect splash of crimson bursts outward, a crime scene in the name of fashion. Oops, she says. Symbolism? Sister Agnes groans. It's not a metaphor, Ellen. It's laundry. Still, you all laugh, even as you help her rinse it clean and rehang it. Eventually, the bell rings for Nun. The 9th hour. You clean up, dump the remaining dye water outside where it trickles away in streaks of rust and sapphire, and hang your gloves on a hook that looks like it's been watching this tragedy for 100 years. Your sleeves are ruined. Your face is blotchy. You look like a Renaissance painting of someone who lost a paint war. But the cloths are beautiful, and in a few weeks someone will be wearing them as part of a new habit, or using them to bind a prayer book, or maybe stitching them into something sacred. It's easy to forget, while bent over boiling vats, that you are part of something bigger than ink-stained fingers and soggy hems. You step outside, the air is cool again, the rain has stopped, at least for now. The garden shimmers with mist. A fresh breeze lifts the edge of your veil. You breathe in deeply, then Ellen sneezes. Hard, red dye splatters across the gravel. Sorry, she says sheepish. Divine chaos. You shake your head. You're going to need a miracle to get that out. Later, it'll be time for music practice, and you know who sings just a little too loud. Better rest your ears now. The music hall is one of the older parts of the convent, its wooden beams dark with centuries of candle smoke, its floor creaky enough to reveal every fidget and every failed attempt at sneaking out early. The windows are long and narrow, the kind that barely let in light but always seem to invite wind, and it is in this drafty echo chamber that you are about to endure what scholars now call choral resilience training. You arrive with your practice book tucked under your arm and your expectations low. Gregorian chants, psalms. Perhaps, if the abbess is feeling generous, the Marian antiphon to close. Sister Agnes is already seated, posture perfect, voice warmed up to precisely ruin everyone else's morale. You slide onto the wooden bench beside Sister Ellen, who's flipping her book upside down. Still looks like worms in a puddle, she mutters. You glance over. Yep. The musical notation, neumes, not notes, does resemble someone tried to document a sneeze with ink and hope. Sister Marjorie clears her throat and starts the warm-up. Dominus vobiscum. The group responds. You try to stay in key. You do not succeed. Gregorian chant is beautiful in theory, smooth, flowing, ethereal. In practice, it's like trying to row a boat with spaghetti. No rhythm, no harmony, just a group of mildly tone-deaf women trying to make a single unbroken line of sound feel like a prayer instead of a punishment. You hum through the scales, eyes scanning the squiggles in the chant book. Every note is floating. Every vowel lasts forever. Somewhere behind you, someone is consistently a beat late. You don't even have to look. You know who it is. Sister Joan. Her nose is sharp, her vowels are sharper. She sings like she's performing for God's most distant cloud. You glance at Ellen. Bet she ends the hymn half a line after the rest of us again. Ellen grins. Every time, it's her signature move. You all begin the first chant. Ubi caritas et amor, Deus ibi est. The room swells with the sound, low, slow, mournful. You slide into the chant, your voice softening into the collective. Despite the struggle, there's something magical in this, like floating down a river where every current is a vowel and every eddy is a breath. Halfway through, Joan lets loose a final est 3 seconds late. You wince. Ellen snorts. Agnes closes her eyes in pious agony. Still, you carry on. Fun historical fact. Not all nuns were musically trained. Some convents had brilliant choirs that drew in donations and prestige. Others had enthusiasm. There are medieval letters from bishops politely suggesting that certain convents embrace silence more fully. Historians still argue whether these letters were meant as spiritual advice or desperate pleas. You move on to psalms. Sister Agnes insists on tempo. Steady like the pendulum of the heavens, she intones. No one knows what that means, but we all nod sagely. The hall echoes as the next hymn rises. You try to match your vowels, try to stay in unison. You fail, but you fail together, which is strangely comforting. The highlight of the session is Sister Beatrix's solo. She steps forward with the confidence of someone who once auditioned for a mystery play and still hasn't gotten over being cast as second beggar. Her voice is clear, rich, slightly wobbly, but undeniably sincere. You glance around. Even Agnes looks impressed, or at least like she's not actively judging. Then Ellen whispers, "She sounds like she's trying to lull a cow to sleep." You break, just a snort, but that's enough. The echo bounces off the high beams like divine rebuke. Agnes frowns. "We are preparing music for the feast of Saint Cecilia." You straighten. "Absolutely, very reverent cow lullabies." She stares. You stare back. She blinks. You win. After practice, everyone shuffles out, shoulders sore from posture, ears ringing from Joan's final high note, and hearts just a little lighter. You linger. The room is quieter now. You walk slowly between the benches, trailing a finger along the worn wood. There are scratches here, doodles carved by bored or inspired sisters. One says simply, "Pax." Another shows a crude fish with big eyes. Someone even etched a small heart inside a cross, bold, considering the abbess's firm stance on unnecessary decoration. You sit alone for a moment and hum the last line of the hymn. It echoes back like a ghost remembering a lullaby. Then the bell rings. Next up, candle making. You rise, stretch your aching back, and brace yourself. Wax waits for no one. And the last time someone tried to get fancy with herbs, well, the dormitory still smells like burned thyme. The candle room is warm, too warm, with the kind of heat that clings to your neck and makes you regret every layer of wool you've ever worn. It smells of melted beeswax, faint smoke, and, confusingly, oregano. You don't ask why. You've learned. You walk in and spot the usual setup, a row of cooling racks, trays of clay molds, and several buckets of wax in various stages of liquidity. Sister Clarissa is in the corner sharpening wicks like she's preparing for battle. She gives you a nod that says, "Don't ruin anything." Candle making in the convent is part science, part spiritual practice, and part fire hazard. The abbess calls it the divine art of illumination. You call it the fastest way to lose your eyebrows. You're assigned to the dipping station. Simple enough in theory. You dip a length of wick into hot wax, let it cool for a moment, then dip again, over and over, like building a candle one whisper at a time. Your hands are already sticky with warm wax as Sister Ellen arrives late, her fingers stained blue from yesterday, dyeing mishap, and still faintly red around the ears from music practice. She picks up a mold and mutters, "I'm making a scented candle." You freeze. That's not a thing here. It could be. What are you using? She grins. Mashed thyme and dried mint, and rose petals from the altar vase. You stare. You're mixing herbs into molten wax? Divine chaos, she chirps. This will not end well. You focus on your own candle, one layer at a time, the wax forming a soft cocoon around the wick. It's meditative, actually. The smell of beeswax is warm, golden. Your fingers move with care. You exhale through your nose, steady. For a moment, you forget the rain, the cold floor, the weird stew from lunch. Historically, candle making in convents was serious business. Wax was expensive, sacred, and often donated by wealthy patrons who expected divine returns on their investment. Some nuns were known for their skill, creating candles that burned longer, brighter, and with less smoke. Others, less so. Sister Agnes appears behind you like a judgmental spirit. "You're tilting your dips," she says. "That'll cause a lump." You sigh. "I prefer to call it character." She stares. You adjust your grip. Meanwhile, Ellen's experiment is bubbling ominously. "Should it be doing that?" she asks. "No." "Is that smoke?" "Yes." Clarissa storms over, lifts the pot, sniffs and glares. "This is not a soup, Sister Ellen. You're conjuring a disaster." Ellen bows dramatically. "A scented disaster." Quirky note. There are historical records of nuns experimenting with fragrant wax, usually for processional candles or feast days. But adding herbs directly into the melt, that's less scent, more spontaneous combustion. Historians still argue whether a fire in 1272 at a convent in Rouen was caused by enthusiastic wax perfuming or just carelessness. You feel the ghost of that debate flickering around Ellen's cauldron. Clarissa dumps the bubbling wax before it becomes an incident and banishes Ellen to wick-trimming duty with the grimness of a medieval executioner. You continue dipping your candle, its shape now pleasantly symmetrical, its surface smooth. You feel, dare you say, accomplished, until it slips, right off the wick, into the cooling vat. You stare in horror. Sister Agnes gasps. Sister Ellen cheers. "A candle cannonball!" You fish it out, dripping, deformed, and possibly judging you. Clarissa makes a sound like she's aged 5 years in 5 seconds. "Start over," she says, voice hollow. You sigh and fetch a new wick. By the end of the session, your arms are tired, your feet are wax-speckled, and you smell like a furniture shop that also serves soup. But the row of finished candles glows with soft, buttery light. You can't help but feel a strange satisfaction. Sister Agnes even mutters, "Not awful," as she inspects your final product. High praise. Ellen holds up her trimmed wicks like trophies. "Smells like victory." Clarissa just groans. As you stack the molds and wipe the counters, you think about the metaphor of it all. Candle making is like faith. Messy, repetitive, prone to the occasional flare-up. But in the end, there's light. Warm, steady, and a little imperfect. Just like all of you, you carry your finished candle out into the corridor. The storm has eased, and the fading daylight paints the cloister in grey-blue shadows. You hold the candle up. Its flame dances, defiant. Sister Ellen leans over. "Still think scented candles are heresy?" You sniff. "Maybe next time just use lavender oil." She grins. The bell rings. Time for one last gathering before nightfall, evening prayers. And then maybe dreams shaped like flickering flames and melting time. Evening has pressed its weight over the convent like a heavy woolen blanket, the kind that smells of lavender, old stone, and the sighs of tired nuns. You shuffle toward the chapel with your candle in hand, feet dragging slightly, wax dust clinging to your hem like you've just crawled out of a beehive. The chapel glows gently as you enter, dozens of candles flickering in sconces and bowls, casting gold across the dark wooden pews and the cold grey altar. You step inside and feel it at once. That hush, that deep, padded silence that wraps around your thoughts and slows your breath. It always feels like stepping underwater, only warmer. You kneel, you sit, you breathe. The bell tolls. Compline. The final prayer of the day. A kind of spiritual bedtime story. You join the chant slow and low. Your voice is a thread in a tapestry woven by women who are sleepy, sore, mildly annoyed with each other, and still very much trying. Telusis ante terminum, rerum creator possumus. The words rise like smoke, twist into the rafters, and vanish into the vault of the ceiling. You don't think about the bad candle, or Ellen's exploding herb potion, or the ghost stories. You just chant, one vowel at a time. Sister Beatrix leads the antiphon. Her voice is calm and confident. You wonder how she always sounds like she's standing on a mountaintop with angels, when you're over here sounding like a mule lost in a hymn book. Still, it's peaceful, the kind of quiet that you forget you need until it wraps around you like light around a flame. You glance to your left and see Lady Isolde. Hood down, hands clasped, candlelight dancing across her face like a slow revelation. She looks different now, less armor, more breath. She meets your eyes for a moment and you both nod, wordless. Eventually the final verse echoes out. There is a pause, always a pause, and then the sisters begin to rise. But tonight, there's a ripple. The abbess steps forward. She rarely speaks at Compline, but tonight she does. Before rest, she says, a note of gratitude. You blink. She turns toward Lady Isolde for sharing the stillness, then toward the rest of you. For the candles, the cloths, the voices, even the sharp ones. You and Ellen exchange glances. And the work, seen and unseen. You didn't realize until now that your spine had been rigid all day. It softens. You are not perfect, the abbess continues, but you are present. And with that, she bows her head and steps away. Sister Joan, clearly unsure what to do with all this emotional sincerity, knocks over a small candle holder as she leaves. It clangs against the stone. Someone hisses. She mutters, symbolic. Back in the dormitory, you find your cot. It's lumpy, cold, blessedly familiar. You change slowly, rubbing your sore arms and eyeing your blue-tinged fingers like the war medals they are. Ellen flops onto her cot across the room and grins. So tomorrow, do you want kitchen duty or more scented wax adventures? You throw your pillow at her. It hits the floor instead. She raises her arms in victory. The dormitory falls quiet. One by one, snores rise like distant thunder. You lie back. The ceiling is dark, invisible, but you know what's there. Beams, stone, faith, and more than a few spiders. You wonder if St. Juliana ever had to trim wicks while trying not to start a fire with time. Maybe. Historians still debate how ordinary their lives really were. These nuns of old, saints, scribes, secret poets. Some left books, others just names in ledgers, and many just threads in the communal cloth, quiet, woven deep. You close your eyes. Outside, the wind moves the trees gently. A shutter knocks once, the last candle gutters out, and sleep finds you. You're dreaming of something strange and soft, a chapel echo, a blue candle flame, a choir of women laughing in the dark. Dawn doesn't so much break as creep in, slow and bashful through the misty slits of the chapel windows. You're already awake, not because you're pious, because Sister Joan has apparently decided to breathe like a broken bellows while she sleeps. You pull your cloak on over your night shift linen and slip out quietly. You pass the herb garden, still wet, and the outer cloister walk where someone left a broom standing straight up, as if waiting for divine orders. The rain has paused, not ended, never ends here, but just paused long enough to let you feel the chill in your bones. There's no assigned task today, not yet. It's one of those rare, unscheduled hours, the kind that feels like both a gift and a trap. You make your way to the chapel and find Lady Isolde already there, sitting on the front pew, looking at nothing. She turns when she hears you. "I didn't know mornings could be this quiet," she whispers. You smile. It's quieter after Joan stops breathing. That gets the ghost of a grin. She's holding her hands in her lap, fingers still red from laundry. "I dreamed I was riding," she says, "fast through the trees. Then I looked down and realized I was holding a lantern instead of reins." You nod. "That's not even the weirdest dream around here. Agnes once dreamed she was being chased by a rogue salter." She laughs softly, and the sound is like a warm breeze across the chapel stones. Silence returns. Eventually, others arrive. One by one. Sister Ellen with a yawn so wide it might be catching demons. Sister Agnes with a stack of parchment and a look of someone already disappointed in the day. The abbess stands at the front, silent as ever, waiting until the moment feels full enough to begin. The chant rises, soft, low, sleepy but sure. And you just listen. Let the others carry the melody this time. You've done your share. Wind down, 300 words. The chant fades. The sisters return to their tasks. You linger. The chapel is still, lit only by the soft morning grey that filters through the high windows and the faint golden light of a single candle left burning near the altar. Its flame barely moves. Its wax has begun to pool at the base, slow and steady. A quiet surrender. You walk the cloister once more, past the sleeping garden, past the dye house where the scent of madder still clings to the stones, past the empty scriptorium where half-written prayers wait patiently to become holy again. Each echo of your footstep is a memory now. A rainy afternoon in the library, pages alive with too much imagination. The sound of laughter over spilled herbs and failed scented candles, hands deep in the earth, searching for weeds and finding peace. You reach the dormitory door and pause, resting your fingers against the wood. Inside, the others will be preparing for another day of prayers and chores and chants, slightly off-key. But you close your eyes. You let the stillness find you. Because sometimes holiness isn't in the chant, or the ink, or even the candle's flame. It's in the silence that follows, the breath between bells, the soft space between footsteps. It's in a moment like this, when the world holds its breath and waits with you. So rest now. Let the rain fall where it must. Let the garden bloom as it wills. Let the shadows lengthen gently along the stone. You've seen a day in the life of women who lived simply and richly, a quiet rhythm of duty, laughter, mud, ink, and song. You can return any time. The cloister doors are always open.